Hello and welcome to another episode of My Chat With by AussieTheatre.com. Deciding on the next steps can be a daunting task for any recent graduate, especially during these COVID times. If you're looking to pursue further vocational studies in the performing arts, studying in the UK can be a life-changing experience. With applications now open for their MA and MFA courses, ALRA have some amazing opportunities on offer for Australian students. My name is Peter Snee, and this is My Chat with Mary Irwin and Gemma Maddock. Hi ladies, how you going?
Very well, how are you?
Very well, thank you. So I'm joined by Mary and Gemma today. And Mary, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Mary Irwin. I am what's known as a designated Linklater teacher, which means that I have a credential to teach Kristin Linklater's voice work to a high standard. It's sort of like being an Alexander teacher or a Feldenkrais teacher, something like that. I am clearly American. I was at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts for 23 years, where I was head of voice. I have a deep background in voice teaching. I also have an MA in voice studies from the Central School of Speech and Drama here in London. And I have been with ALRA just these last 2 years teaching voice, but also voice and text, but also really working a lot with Kieran Sheehan, who's Vice Principal of Curriculum, and the late magnificent Kristin Linklater to develop this new MA in Linklater teaching practice, voice and applied theater arts.
Amazing. Well, I'm very excited to find out more about the course in just 2 minutes. Right. So before we do that, we'll also introduce Gemma. Welcome.
Thank you, welcome. Thanks, Peter. I'm Gemma Maddock. I'm actually from Central Wheatbelt, Western Australia. So I'm from a tiny town called Muckenbooden in the middle of nowhere, which I love. And I studied to be an actor in Ballarat, Melbourne, Victoria, and moved over to London to do my MA or MFA at Central, as Mary did also, and never left since I've been working on the West End and UK tours with shows like Matilda, Strictly Ballroom, Priscilla, a couple of Aussie shows, and have been working at ALRA now for the past nearly 4 years. And it's been a wonderful journey. It's a fantastic school. And there's a differentiation here. We call them drama schools, whereas at home it would be a university. It's the same caliber, same conservatoire training. And it's a wonderful place because it has this incredible atmosphere and ethos that I think is really important when you're there to study the creative arts.
Yeah, amazing. So the school is split over 2 faculties, is that correct?
Correct, yes. There's 2 campuses. There's one in London where Mary and I are based, and then there's another campus in Wigan, which is North England, not too far from Manchester. More people are familiar perhaps with Manchester. And the curriculums are the same. However, the class sizes are slightly different sometimes, and it's a different option, particularly for those who live sort of in the north of England, as opposed to coming all the way down to London to study.
Yeah, amazing. So we're here to talk specifically about the MA Voice course that you've got going on. Does that course take place just on the London campus?
Yes, it will. We haven't welcomed our first cohort yet. We hope to do that in just about a year's time. And most of the teaching and learning will take place here in London. But there will be a 2-week residency at the Kristin Linklater Voice Centre in Orkney in Scotland. And and we'll talk more about this when we get into the detail of the course, but between the taught portions of year 1 and year 2, students will go away and observe a Linklater voice teacher, and they'll also do some applied theater placement work with an organization. So all of the classes are in London, but people will be in other locations.
Got it.
They can really be anywhere in the world for those observations and
Exactly.
experiences.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. So why don't you tell me a bit about the course, Mary? What it includes, who it's targeted towards, or who it would suit well.
So this course is called MFA in Linklater Teaching Practice, Voice and Theater Arts. And my mentor, Kristin Linklater, who sadly died on the 5th of June of this year, and Kristin was 84, but she was very vibrant and very together. I had been on a Zoom with her just a couple of weeks before she passed away. No one expected this to happen. So the community around Kristin is still, you know, sort of coming to terms with that and organizing ourselves in the aftermath of losing Kristin. This course wouldn't exist without her. Kristin I'm not used to talking about her in past tense yet. Kristin was one of the single most influential voice teachers for actors from the late 20th century through the beginning of this century. She grew up on Orkney, was trained as an actor in London at Lambda, became a voice teacher through observing her teacher there, Iris Warren. And when she was a young woman, when she was just about 27, 28 years old, she went to America in the 1960s, where she stayed for 50 years and had a massive career. Along the way, Kristin began to train teachers and, as I mentioned earlier, to designate certain people to teach her work to a standard that she approved, essentially. So the process of becoming a designated Linklater teacher is challenging, and it's a rigorous artistic process. It's a rigorous academic process. There's a lot that goes into it. And the first teachers were probably designated in the 1960s. There are only approximately, I think, about 250 designated Linklater teachers worldwide. There are about a dozen in Australia right now. Right. Some terrific people. And it's never been possible for there to be a degree that also involved training that would lead to the designated Linklater teacher status. So from now on, when I say DLT, what I mean is designated Linklater teacher. Right. And I don't know about Australia, but here in Britain, people tend to say tutor when I would say teacher. So but we're called teachers. So I'm not sure what your language is, but in any event, it was a long-held goal of Kristin's that there be a degree somewhere. So that people, so speaking to your question of who is this degree for, so that somebody who has not already received a postgraduate degree, an MA or MFA in some other area in the performing arts, but who has already had probably an acting training, but not necessarily, possibly a singer, could be, you know, somebody from a variety of backgrounds, but who has developed a great interest in this voice work, probably worked as an actor. I worked as an actor before I became a voice teacher and have continued to do so since then. Many of us do. Then the other people who might be attracted to this would be people in similar disciplines, you know, people who've studied speech therapy, music, but also people who have a social conscience and are theater makers. So one of the big chunks of this degree, so there are 4 elements to the degree, and Kristin chose all of them, you know. I've been helping her design the degree, but the core elements were all chosen by her. So it's truly tragic that she's not here with us talking about this today, because it was the manifestation of something that she'd worked toward for many, many years. But in any event, it's obviously her voice work, the movement work of Trish Arnold, the late great Trish Arnold, who was a wonderful movement person here in Britain. Acting work developed by Michael Chekhov, who was, as I'm sure you know, a nephew of Anton Chekhov, and applied theater work, which will be taught and implemented on the course by Dr. Brent Blair, who is a designated Linklater teacher, but also an expert in the applied theater social awareness techniques of Auguste Boal, who was so those are the 4 cornerstone pieces. So probably our ideal candidate is somebody who is an actor, possibly a recent grad, has an interest in social theater, and knows that they would probably like eventually to move into teaching and facilitating.
Tell me a bit more about Kristin's theories, the theories behind the work that you're teaching on the course.
It's such a big question. So Kristin's work is, she wrote 2 books in her lifetime. Her primary text is called Freeing the Natural Voice. And it is used as there it is, Exhibit A. Thank you, Gemma. It's used as a text in many, many, many actor training programs all over the world. It's been translated into many languages. Something interesting happened in the middle of the 20th century, which was sort of a seismic shift away from a more old-fashioned elocution-based style of training actors' voices into something that we might say is more holistic, that involves, first of all, the whole body when I say holistic, but also a level of emotional awareness that was probably not present. And I say probably because I wasn't there and I don't know, but you know, the evidence is that it wasn't terribly present in the elocutionary style of voice teaching that had been going on previously. And so Kristin's teacher, Iris Warren, was working in this way with her students at Lambda. Simultaneously in the 50s, Cicely Berry here in London, who was at the Royal Shakespeare Company, married an American actor who had been blacklisted in New York City during the McCarthy era, and he's a method-trained actor. Right. And so they began a conversation, and Cicely Berry at this point began to work with John Barton as a director. And so voice training took a major turn, primarily because of Kristin and Cicely Berry, into a realm which involves much more self-awareness, self-reflection, although one thing that Kristin always said and was very important to her is that the work is not therapy. It might be therapeutic and feel good, but like all good acting training, you know, we need to bring our full selves, but it's not therapy. She had a wide reach. She had teachers in Italy, in Germany, in Spain, in Australia, as we said. The Linklater community is just beginning to spread into Asia with some people in Japan and South Korea and a couple now in China. We're in the middle of, there are 2 teachers in our current designation cohort who are not in this course, but through the traditional pathway, who are Russian, who will be our first teachers. Yeah, so we're kind of spreading out, and this course is a piece of that.
Amazing. And why do you think Kristin was so passionate about the training and about training more teachers to carry on?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I would say essentially because of how it impacted the people who engage in the training. In other words, it brings us more into ourselves, so that one of the things that Kristin always said was, I want to hear you and not your voice, right? so that the voice beautiful is not the goal. The voice authentic is the goal.
Right.
And in theater making, I think the benefits of such an approach are obvious. But also in this larger social engagement aspect, Kristin had a very, very strong belief in the ability and the importance of us as theater makers, as artists, to impact the world in a positive way.
Yeah, amazing.
So,
and you mentioned that
yeah.
Kristin had 2 books. Can you just give me
Yes.
the titles of those books again?
Absolutely. So I don't think I gave you the second one. The first one is Freeing the Natural Voice, and the second one is Freeing Shakespeare's Voice. Kristin did a lot of work with Shakespeare text.
So, Gemma, moving from, we've spoken a bit about the course, but moving from Australia to the UK can be a bit of a daunting task. I obviously did it the other way around, moving from the UK to Australia. But tell me, why specifically are you looking to recruit Australian graduates to take part in the course?
Fantastic question, Peter. We are looking, I guess, for a really international cohort. I think there's something really incredible about this course, that is we're teaching the content, but the other, I think, something that I'm really proud of, and I know Mary is as well, is that the cost of this course is the same for anyone from the UK as it would be internationally. And as someone who came from Australia to study internationally, fees are a huge importance. So there's that sort of wonderful thing. I think it's this opportunity for us to have an international cohort, because different voices, literally and figuratively, add to the learning of a cohort. And they add to that ethos, that way that they interact with each other, and the way that they interact with the work itself as well. So we're really interested in having that international cohort. And so Australia seems like a wonderful place. And I have a personal, obviously, connection there as well, to look for some of that international cohort. And I love that it is also an opportunity that we present that doesn't break the bank, I guess, in a sense. It is the same for everybody. No matter where you're applying from in the world, the cost to do this is the same.
There's a lot of universities.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
very different, and it was important to us. And we have to give credit here to Kieran Sheehan, ALRA's vice principal for curriculum. This was his idea. It was very important to him. And I think it's going to make a huge difference. As Gemma was, I was an international student, and it's expensive. So,
yeah. And there's it sort of feels like it opens the door to so many more possibilities. Yeah. Like there are some wonderful opportunities in Australia and all over the world, but I do believe that this is an incredible opportunity, and it'd be a shame for us not to have that available to everyone. I also feel strongly about the fact that there is a community in Australia in the arts that is strong, but it needs strengthening, as someone who's from Australia. And perhaps you agree, Peter. And I do believe that this course itself, in its want to be socially conscious as well as look at voice work, would really contribute to the community of Australia as well. Because the people we want to participate and be part of this MFA, we want to go out and to keep creating, I'm going to say art, theatre and art, using their skills as facilitators and voice practitioners and all of the other multiple skills that will come from this course. Yeah. And it's not just about creating theatre necessarily, but going into communities and areas that perhaps haven't had exposure to the sort of work that we hope to create within this course. So I see a huge benefit culturally and artistically past this course for Australia as well, for any people interested in coming across and studying with us.
Amazing. So you say you want to be socially responsible, or the course aims to be socially responsible. What do you mean by that? Absolutely.
So they're huge, as Mary mentioned, the 4 cornerstones. One of those cornerstones is applied theatre. And applied theatre, it looks at different theatre ways of making theatre, but really also about engaging with community and places where there isn't necessarily an engagement with arts and culture and theatre. And so it's a lot about facilitating and making those changes and asking those questions within outside of the theatre going community, I guess. So that is a really large part of the course itself. It forms one of the 4 cornerstones of the course, and that will be run by, as Mary said, Dr. Brent Blair, who is really an expert in this sort of area. And that was something really important to Kristin as well, to have that idea that this affects more than just the theatre and the arts community. And voices really do, both literally and figuratively, have a huge impact on our lives on a daily basis outside of the world of theatre and the arts. Obviously, we're still looking at it through a lens a lot of the time through the arts, because that's where we're coming from, but using that platform and that connection to the applied theatre and that socially aware idea is really important to us.
All right. So where do you think the course could lead its graduates? What's the dream? What would the dream be to sit here next year having this chat and you said, oh, the course went fantastically well. Here's where our students are. This is what they went on to do, or this is where they ended up.
Well, it's a 2-year course, so we'll have to reconvene in 2 years. Quite all right. I would say that for many of them, they might follow a traditional pathway into teaching in a conservatory environment. One of the things that's important about the course delivering an MFA, which is a Master of Fine Arts degree, is that is the credential that is required now to teach in most conservatory and university programs in America, I believe in Australia as well, here in the UK. So it will give people that credential to allow them to teach in multiple environments, to teach in actor training programs in all over the world. The other thing that's interesting, though, is the idea of somebody who might take themselves out into the world as an artist teacher and engage with community, perhaps teach voice privately, but also have a social engagement piece to what they're doing, and also continue an acting career. So I can imagine some variation there. There's also, with the large community of designated Linklater teachers and people who are trainees to become Linklater teachers now, there's a large community all over the world of around 300 people. So there's a network available to help people. For example, when our students in the space between the taught portions of year 1 and year 2, when they go off to do their placements, we will be facilitating those along with them. We'll be working with them to find the right person to match them with, to observe the voice teaching, and to do an applied theater placement with, which will be more active. I should say something about the observerships. It was very important to Kristin that teacher trainees not teach too soon. So actually observing a DLT of senior standing is an important piece of this. So our students won't begin to practice teach until year 2, until after they have had a year's worth of training and have been observing a senior DLT teaching the progression of exercises. There's a very specific progression of exercises for about a semester.
Okay, great.
And then they'll come back and begin to do supervised practice teaching, working with each other, teaching undergraduate students at ALRA, and many, many, many other exciting things in their second year.
What does the course look like? Is it a full-time course, full-time contact hours for the students?
During the first year, it will look and feel much more similar to a conservatory year for an acting student. So yes, that will be a full-time year, and sort of running 9 to 6. I'm just looking at my little timetable here to make sure I'm not going to tell any lies. 2 hours of movement in the morning, 3 hours of voice, 2 hours of acting and rehearsal. So, that's a pattern to begin with. They will also be doing some performance work. And by performance work, I don't mean necessarily public performances, but it was very important to Kristin that these students, even though this isn't an actor training program per se, but that they have the experience of synthesizing the work into an acting performance. So using various kinds of texts, contemporary texts, all the way back to Shakespeare and the Greeks at various different times. That's the first year. We've talked about what happens between the 2 years, which is exciting. Then after the holiday break, in the middle of year 2, they will come back, and year 2 is very, very different. They will continue to have voice and movement classes, slightly less intensively, but they'll also then begin to have a lot of seminars in things like embodied anatomy, things that voice teachers need to know, embodied phonetics, business of voice, teaching voice to neurodiverse individuals, individuals with varying kinds of needs, sensitivity around diversity training of all kinds, working with wide groups of people, hopefully from various backgrounds. Gemma, what am I leaving out? It's such a long list.
It is a long list. Philosophy of voice, pedagogy, singing, voiceover. There's a huge range of seminars and workshops and sort of small intensive bursts where they'll learn all of these things that are really valuable to adding to the bow of things that you might be interested in, but also making them really well-rounded in their way that they interact with their potential students or groups that they'll work with. And
so, we are not saying that we will equip people to become, for example, a singing teacher, but if someone discovers that that's their passion through working with a DLT here in London named Deb Garvey, they would then be able to go out and move further. So the other thing that might happen is someone might discover a pathway toward a specialization that they can then do further study in afterwards. So yeah, and it ends with, again, a performance project, most likely though a private performance project for the ALRA community. And then it ends with what I think will be a very exciting and celebratory 2 weeks, where the students will work with a woman named Andrea Herring, who is an American DLT who is in charge of worldwide teacher training. And that will be the culmination of the DLT training. So it's a pretty packed 2 years. And yes, I think someone should consider that it's a full-time engagement.
Yes. Right.
I think it's definitely a full-time engagement. I think what's really nice about what Mary just said at the end there is it sort of swings back to your previous question, Peter, that when we think of our graduates, I think of them all across the world doing what they discovered within the work is something that they can take further. So whether that be teaching in a conservatoire, that specialist thing, or whether it's out in the community or a combination of the two, but working on what they discovered they're really interested in and can take further.
So tell me, how does this course differ from other MA and MFA courses?
2 important things. One, that Kristin really did essentially design it herself, and that in the design, there is that applied theater social awareness piece. I think that is so that we are looking at training someone to be an artist teacher in a variety of possible environments with perhaps a slightly larger scope.
I would add to that as well. Mary mentioned earlier on about a holistic approach. I think the voice work of Linklater, of Kristin, it so incorporates that holistic idea of movement, body, acting, voice, and that is a part of the course, whereas that isn't a movement and acting and applied theatre is certainly not a part of other voice MFAs across the world. So that I think makes it as well really individual and unique, that you get this really well-rounded training with this lens of voice at the heart of it. Right. But that holistic idea means you can come at it from so many more different angles and have an understanding, I think, of all the other elements that contribute to this practice of art and theatre and the rest.
And voice, yeah. And I suppose before we say goodbye, we should mention that if somebody decides that this is not the MA program for them, that ALRA does also have an MA in acting, an MA in directing, and another new MA, which I don't want to get this wrong, in creative performance, right? Creative practice, sorry, which will also be a teacher training degree, but not specifically for voice.
And the MA acting, so the MFA of voice that we, Mary and I are a big part of, is run out of our London campus. However, there is MA in directing and creative practice that Mary's talking about is run out of the north, and the directing is also in the south. But the MA in acting is in both campuses.
Right.
So for the acting, can the students pick which campus they're interested in attending?
Yes.
They can apply for whichever, they can pick a preference. Yeah, but they won't always get the preference. About 90% of the time they do.
Yeah, great. The course sounds absolutely amazing. It sounds like it's going to be action-packed for anyone that takes part. So if we've got people that are watching that think this is the perfect course for me, Gemma, why don't you just speak a little bit to life, moving over. So what's student life like? Is there, do you provide any support in helping students find accommodation, or kind of getting settled and set up on that side of the globe?
Yeah, we do. ALRA as a school itself has an established student representatives and body and liaisons to help with those sorts of things, and we have international students as well already, so we do help in things like helping them set up getting visas, so that not the getting of the visa itself, but all the requirements you need to apply for a visa to study overseas. Right. We help and through with those documents that you might need. And when it comes to moving and finding a place, we have something I'm really proud of, a really strong community at ALRA. And it's done in a lot of ways that are done at lots of other drama schools, where it's like, here's the Facebook group, but but what it does is it's literally, here's all the houses that are looking for a room, here's the places to look. It's very, and that's done through the staff and the students. Actually, it's quite collaborative in that way. With that, we do recommend, because it's so intense, and this will be said, that you live close by, so you can find some rest within that as well. So we do support in that way. In fact, I'm thinking of the staff members who do the most of that work. They're incredibly supportive people, and almost at the end of a phone, probably far too much for the students themselves. So yes is the answer. We help with all of the questions that pop up around shifting, finding, getting your NI number, your national insurance number, and all those sorts of things. They're there to sort of answer all those questions.
How to go to the doctor.
Like all those really fundamental things that you don't think of, and then you move countries and you have to sort out. They have experience with lots of international students, so are ready for all those questions. And we'll organize things like a seminar to break that down when they first arrive, and things like that. So we are well equipped with years of experience of international students to help with those questions, and also to support. What I'd like to mention now is actually a really great, strong well-being section of the school. It's embedded into our BA and current acting MA curriculum of well-being, and so there is a huge amount of support for students as well who might be struggling just with the move. I mean, I know it's massive, having done it myself. It is huge to come and study internationally, no matter where you're from, and there's so many layers to that aside from just the physical moving. And so there is actually, I think, a really great emotional support system in place at ALRA as well for that.
There will be a lot of one-on-one tutorials for our MFA students. So they will also get a lot of internal emotional support from their particular faculty. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead, Peter. What was your question?
Just something silly, really. I just wanted to find out what your favorite thing to do was in London.
I'm going to answer your question this way. When I was a postgraduate student here, my favorite thing to do when I wasn't working was to go to theater and use my student card, my student ID card, way back then, to get, £5 or £10 tickets to see all kinds of amazing things.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, on a personal level, I one of my favorite things is I love the outdoors, being a farm kid from Western Australia. I go on hikes in the most incredible places. I've just been on like 4 incredible hikes in Scotland last week. So that is great, but also I'd echo what Mary said, and the theatre, the access to theatre I never had access to in Australia is unprecedented for the price as well. Like, it is so cheap to go to the theatre comparatively here in London, and I just soaked that up when I first came. But one layer on top of that, as someone interested in the arts, just also the practitioners who run workshops and classes, that I had read all their books before I came out here. I'm like, oh my goodness, now I'm in the room doing 3 hours with them. That access is something that I didn't really fathom until I moved here. So that's something I still love doing, and would also actually be embedded into the course as well. There will be practitioners, I think, that they will meet and go, oh, I've read about you, I've seen you.
Yes.
And that sort of brings it, I don't know, it sort of consolidated that I was in the right place, but also was really exciting about being a part of that field as well.
And also London is such a wonderfully rich city architecturally and historically, and I am a bit of an architecture junkie, and just literally walking around town is a wonderful thing to do, especially with, a friend or a guidebook or something in my ear that knows a little bit more than I do. So yeah, you never run out of wonderful things to do here.
No, I think I've been here a while now, just coming up 5 years, and I still pinch myself on a daily basis walking around this city sometimes. It's stunning.
Well, I am sold. So applications are
They are.
And when do applications close for the course?
All the international auditions this year will still be online. Right, yes. In future, we hope to be able to go back to being able to go around and meet people in person, which of course is always a great thing to do. But I wouldn't say applications will be actually closing until probably March or so of next year. Right.
I think the current climate, we've kept it as flexible as we can in order to get everyone ready before the school year would start. And so that date is still being finalized.
Yeah. And we would, we don't want to lose a good prospective student because they're a little bit late with their application materials.
Right.
I would also just add that we have specific international auditions for anyone, particularly in Australia, in February. Off the top of my head, that's around the 8th of February, but it would be up on the website.
Right.
But I know that's online, but that won't be the last opportunity, but it will be the main opportunity for applicants from Australia.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, we'll put the links into the ALRA website where people can find out more information. We'll put that in the link of this video, and anyone that's interested can go on and find out a little bit more about what's going on and find out the key dates there in the months coming up.
That would be terrific. Thank you so much, Peter.
Not at all. Thank you for your time. Have a lovely day, and let me know if you need anything else.
Thank you very much, Peter. Cheers.
Bye.
Voice is universal. Speech is cultural.